Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is game number 2 here between MVP and Sen. This time we're here on the Shattered Temple. We got Sen spawning in the 6 o'clock position as our red Zerg player, and then over here in the 3 o'clock position is MVP as the blue Terran player. So yes, this is game number 2 here in the series between these two players. As we saw last game, MVP ended up winning with some stellar defense. Ended up opening up Hellions for a little bit of map control, and then going Marine Tank. Now we saw Sen push out with heavy roaches and then following that up with Speedlings. And as I explained last game, the idea behind that is you use the roaches to bust through the frontal wall, and then those Speedlings are allowed to get into the Terran player's main base and just kind of wreak havoc. Now the problem was MVP had some great tank and marine positioning, having those tanks just close enough to shoot but a little bit out of that roach range, and with those marines in range as well. And then he also provided that avenue for those SCVs to get that mass repair and that supply depot, and he was just barely able to prevent Sen from busting through that wall. Now, had Sen gone through that wall, MVP would have had a much harder time, but again, that was just a beautiful defense, and that led to the obvious immediate counterattack because Sen invested so much in those roaches and Speedlings. It did pretty much 0 damage, and on top of that, wasn't able to drone up as a result of spending his larva on units. Well, then he had a terrible economy, and he just did not have the forces necessary to prevent that counterattack from just breaking through him. So there you go. That was a pretty quick game number 1, and again, here we are at game 2. Now, as we can see, they are spawning in a near position, meaning ground positional-wise, Sen and MVP are very close to one another. As you can see right there, it's pretty much as close as they can get in terms of ground distance. That's going to make for early aggression, of course, being very strong and certainly very possible. Now, as we can see, MVP deciding not to go for that full wall off at the front of his base, not with that barracks at least. He's going to be keeping the production buildings inside of his main base. Now, that does lead me to believe that we may be seeing a second and third depot up front, or a second depot and his quick expansion. Those two things are certainly very likely, but the idea is keeping those production buildings back and having other buildings blocking the front. It means that whatever attachments you have on your production buildings, that's vision that you're denying your opponent from seeing. That's scouting information that you deny them from seeing. Now we've got an SCV engaging the drone right now. Will the drone go for the extractor trick? He knows the marine is in play, and there we go, trying to extend his life as long as possible. Now back over here, we can see that SCV scout did manage to scout out that natural expansion, so Sen has been spotted right now. He does have a spawner pool and extractor just about finished, not going for extractor first this time, so that metabolic boost will be a little bit later than it was last game. But still, not the biggest of deals, most certainly. It just means that he's going to be able to work more and focus more on his mineral economy, allowing him to drone up harder and get those queens nice and early as well, probably even afford a spine crawler if he deems it necessary. So right now, clearly Sen knows that they're in that close positional spot, so I do expect some sort of defense. Well, let's see if he keeps up this extractor trick by canceling and rebuilding. Nope, just decides to let it finish, so he will be losing that extractor. But again, take a look at this. He's got a second supply depot right there, and it's either going to be a third supply depot to finish it off, or that command center. No, the command center is going to go right here, so I expect the third supply depot to finish that wall off. This is going to stop secondary scouting from checking those attachments on these buildings. That's the entire point of that. That's the whole purpose. 2 Speedlings in play now, just the 2. Metabolic boost is coming on through. He's also got another overlord coming out. Spine crawler, as expected, really does need that in this particular position in this game. He would just be way too vulnerable without that. Now we've got those first 2 Zerglings moving on up, and they're actually going to be able, oh, nope, 2 Marines out front will stop those 2 Zerglings from pushing all the way in and scouting out that expansion, so he wasn't able to see that, the fact that that was coming. First 2 Hellions are now in play, and where is that next supply depot? I really expect him, oh wow, he ended up building it over here. He was content with those Marines and Hellions as early game scouting denying defense. Now we've got the Hellions and 2 Marines trying to push on in, however, with those Queens and that spine crawler, they're not standing much of a chance. It's way too small of a force to actually do that. Trying to sneak on up and unable to, because those 2 queens properly positioned there. The biggest thing, MVP wasn't expecting to do a ton of damage there. He just wanted to get into the main and see what Sen was doing. He wanted to know if there was a roach warren or a baling nest, especially last game, given the fact that we saw that early roach push. That's something that is certainly possible on this map, given these spawn locations. Now let's see what that transition is. will be Rax heavy, so he will be going Marine tank transition, just like we saw last game. You can see building up his Marine and Siege tank forces. Hellions still trying to stay out front and deny any Speedlings or drones from escaping this natural expansion to prevent any additional scouting from Sen until Sen kind of mounts up those forces. Now we have got that Roach Warren coming through, and there is also an Evolution Chamber. You can see the Evolution Chamber up front, Roach Warren hidden inside of the main right now. Hellions really not going to be able to sneak up at all. This Evolution Chamber forcing them to channel through here, and that would run right into that Speedling wall plus that Queen, while taking shots from that Spine Crawler as well. MVP now actually granting vision of the high ground for his Marines before landing that orbital command. This is going to allow him to take out that Overlord. At the same time, this does tell Sen the expansion's coming, although it's probably not the biggest of surprises. When you see early Hellions, this is certainly a strong possibility, and you know, it's something that you definitely factor into the equation in terms of possible builds that your Terran opponent may be going out with. Now, finally, with enough Speedlings to push out of his base, forcing MVP's Hellions back. However, here come those Marines and Siege tanks. As you can see, Siege Tech almost finished right now. MVP looks to be prepared to set up shop right outside of Sen's natural expansion. A tank over here would be phenomenal, and there it goes. This is a major problem on this map for Zerg players when we're seeing this type of a timing push. How do you get to that Siege tank? That's the major issue. He's going to protect that Siege tank with these Marines, Hellions, and the Siege tank position right outside of the natural. This makes it nearly impossible, and what this is going to allow MVP to do is slowly encroach on this natural expansion, and it's just going to be very difficult. You can see this Siege tank's able to creep forward because it's protected by these two, and there's again really nothing Sen can do about that. Now Sen will be coming out with roaches, and that's what he's going to be using to try to bust this tank contain here. Hellions provided a little breathing room as that Spine Crawler was forced to lift off, able to poke forward and get a little bit of free damage there on those Zerglings, softening them up for the eventual push that is going to continue here. Marines continuing to move forward. We've got combat shield research coming out. Roaches denying those Hellions inside of the main from doing any damage whatsoever. Keep in mind, this entire time MVP's allowed to macro up back at home. We've got Roaches and Speedlings preparing to try to push on this. One tank is down, second tank's going to get dropped. However, there's still two tanks alive and a lot of Marines still left, and I am going to expect MVP to keep this up. Really, Sen hasn't provided enough pressure to stop MVP from continuing this slow push here. And combat shield again, very close to finish. Constant macroing up. We've got constant SCV production back at home. MVP is not hurting at all while he's doing tremendous amounts of damage to Sen. Close position, Shattered Temple, rather. That's what this one is called. Very difficult situation. This type of timing push from a Terran player is just so strong. And what is the Zerg going to do right now? He's going to be trying to mount up his forces and bust out Sen, doing what he can. He's got to try to overwhelm the Terran player here, but there are two tanks now in that protected position, and that is unbelievable. The Marines plus that safe tank haven back there, and we're going to see the completion as well of that bunker there. And unfortunately, a few misrallied Overlords. We're going to be some free kills here. And Sen now sitting at supply cap. That is not what he wanted to happen at all. More tanks, more Marines. Combat shield now done. Stimpack research coming through as well. Sen needs to continue to try to just throw units against the wall. But this is, as you can see, just incredibly difficult. Scanning the high ground, allowing him to drop that creep tumor. He wants to stop that creep spread. That's going to give, of course, Sen the advantage of that extra speed. Now we've got Roaches hunkered away back here. Now, again, what the Zerg player needs to do in this type of a situation, what Sen needs to do here, is he just needs to wait until he has overwhelming forces. And it really, unfortunately, it's a tough situation because you have to judge how much a Terran player has, and you need to make sure that whenever you push, it's going to be exactly enough to break him and not too much more, and certainly not less, because if you have less, then you just throw away units and you don't even break the contain, and then you're still in the crappy position you were before you lost all of your units. So we've got a few more Speedlings and Roaches coming out. Carapace level 1 upgrade coming out as well. It does look like Sen may very well be losing this expansion every time he tries to push forward with the Roaches. Here comes the push right now. We've seen the drones come forward into the mix as well, trying to avoid trying to soak up some of that splash damage while the Roaches and Queens push forward. There's still some more tanks in the back now. All the drones got roasted. There's still a lot of Roaches, though. A couple Speedlings coming to join the mix. Bunkers get dropped. Still now 3 tanks, though, and a bunch of Marines, and Sen has just lost everything. There it is, guys, the GG. Close position, TVZ on Shattered Temple. We saw MVP go with a very strong Marine tank bunker contain against his opponent Sen. And unfortunately for Sen, even when he threw literally everything he had at it, he was unable to break this very strong contain. Alright guys, that is it for this series between MVP and Sen. Hopefully you did enjoy it. Relatively short series, but I would say somewhat interesting nonetheless. As always, if you like the content, please subscribe. Thank you for watching. Keep watching and keep owning.